Florida Surgeon General announces plans to roll back vaccine mandates for the state. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. It is Thursday, September 11th, 2025. Coming up, on this day of remembrance, honoring those who died in the 9/11 terror attacks, we'll take you to local events and share how you can take part in a day of unity and giving back. Also, Central Florida mourns the loss of a true trailblazer, Mable Butler, the woman known as the matriarch of African American politics in Orlando, has died. We will look at the legacy she leaves and how she helped shape the region into what it is today. But first, an announcement from the Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, could reshape how public health is managed in this state.
The Florida Department of Health, in partnership with the governor, is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates in Florida law. All of them. All of them.
That announcement from Florida's top health official last week could drastically change long-standing vaccination requirements.
Every last one of them. Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. Okay? Who am I as a government, or anyone else, or who am I as a man standing here now, to tell you what you should put in your body?
Today, we will clear up confusion about what's included and what isn't in the policy change and discuss how it will impact communities. First, let's hear from you, the people living here in Central Florida, reacting to the plan, beginning with J.J. Johnson from Orlando.
I have serious reservations about Florida's Surgeon General for many years now. It was obvious to me that his appointment and actions are all politically motivated to please the science deniers that make up the large, vocal contingent of the MAGA world that has consumed this state. First, it was the COVID vaccine. Then fluoridated drinking water being fought by the governor. This Surgeon General, who in my opinion is violating his Hippocratic oath by putting so many people's lives at risk by advocating for parental rights instead of the right of all citizens, especially children and the elderly, to a healthy environment. I have an infant grandson, and no one in my family wants him to attend a school in the future where there is a strong possibility that he'll be exposed to the unnecessary risks associated with diseases that have been successfully eradicated up till now. I have a 102-year-old mother who had to leave Florida because the COVID vaccine policy put her life at risk. We are seriously considering moving from this so-called free state of Florida to somewhere safe from tyranny and ignorance.
Another listener, Roy, sent us an email that says, quote, "I just don't understand why anyone in a free society should be forced against their will to get a vaccine," end quote. Now let's hear what Judy Nying from Deltona has to say.
I've been a public school teacher, science teacher for 27 years. I'm also a mother, and I'm now a grandmother of two young children. One is almost 3 and the other is almost 6. Being absent from school is one of the greatest indicators of academic failure. And I know, and we know that not all students are sick when they miss school, but we also know when they are sick, they do miss school. And what takes them out are colds and flu. That's going through my school right now. It's not the measles, it's not the mumps, rubella, tetanus, polio, pertussis, or any other diseases covered by those mandatory vaccinations or vaccines. I've never heard of any of my students missing class for any of these reasons. So beyond the obvious concern of our children getting sick and possibly dying, we have the stress of this academic failure and the strain on parents who may miss work to care for their child. There's only so much time off that a parent gets.
I reached out to the state health department for clarification on their latest guidance and which vaccines are included or excluded, particularly any changes affecting school or child care immunization requirements. They told me that no rules have officially changed yet, but the state has started the process of removing 4 vaccines from the list of those mandated for children to get into school. They are hepatitis B, Hib, pneumococcal, and chickenpox. The department says the focus is on medical freedom, and this update does not limit access to vaccines. All other vaccines required for entry into school in Florida remain in place, including polio, mumps, and measles, unless that is changed by the state legislature. The Florida Department of Health says parents are encouraged to consult with their healthcare providers when making decisions for their children. Dr. Rana Alyssa, a pediatrician and president of the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, urges parents to do the same. She has concerns about the impact of the proposed removal of 4 vaccine requirements.
I have two concerns. First one is this is going to cost lives. And I went to medical school wanting to help everyone, and every life matters the most. I mean, you do everything possible to save a life. And now we're going to have lives lost. And we see it in third world countries when there are no vaccine, because vaccine work. Second, this is going to overwhelm the health system that is already overwhelmed. We know that we have shortage of physicians. The numbers are scary. In 2030, how many thousands of physicians we're going to be short. So we're already short. We're short-staffed too. And now we're going to have sick people. I mean, I don't know, 200%, 300% increase? It's going to be a remarkable increase, and it's going to overwhelm us. It's going to cost our state a lot of money. That's very concerning for our state.
What are you seeing? What types of trends do you see with vaccinations among kids in Florida?
I have to say, in the last year, the increase in patients refusing vaccine is very troubling. People are just, simply like, I don't want vaccine. And they don't want to hear about education. I made up my mind and I don't want to hear about it. I mean, and sometimes disrespectfully too. So it's definitely troubling.
Let me ask you about that trust. We are hearing from some people in our audience who normally support vaccines, but they're feeling uneasy, not because they've changed their minds about the science, but because they're worried that under the current federal administration, oversight and safety standards might not be as strong. What do you say to those people?
They're confused. I feel so bad for the people. Look, we are confused. It took us about a couple of hours to know what this is all about. Did we stop right now? Are we stopping in a month? Are we stopping tomorrow? I have my neighbors, attorneys around me, and my friends and everything. I got texts. What does this mean? Or can we still get the vaccine? Can we go to pharmacy and get the flu shot? I mean, people are confused. I have no idea where is this coming from. We have decades and decades of data and research, and every single study came out to say that vaccines are risky and are dangerous and cause autism. Was debated, and it was proven to be wrong and false and actually fake. So I'm not sure why. Why are we doing this? Why are we debating something actually made the lives of people longer?
There are strong supporters of ending vaccine mandates. They cite parental rights and medical freedom, saying vaccine should be a personal choice and not forced. How do you respond?
Your personal freedom stop when it risks public safety. Every religion, every ethical value, whether you're religious or not, would tell you to save people's lives. You can't do whatever you want if whatever you want is going to endanger people and to kill somebody around you. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Dr. Alyssa, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions on behalf of our audience. Parents who rely on schools to tell them what vaccines their kids need and when, could that change? And where can they get that information if it's not required for schools?
I really think the most important person and the best person to ask is the pediatrician and your primary care.
Another concern we're hearing, chickenpox and shingles are caused by the same virus. We've heard concerns about that connection. If chickenpox vaccination is no longer required, what do you say to people in the community who are worried about some of these long-term impacts like shingles later in life?
I would be the most worried about pregnant women because the risk of varicella to the unborn child is very big. And, they can have congenital anomalies, they can have neurodevelopmental delay, brains be affected, small heads, skin issues, a contraction in their limbs. I would be worried about everyone. Everyone is at risk, just like I said. It's from 0 day of life until the very last day. But when it comes to chickenpox, everyone is at risk. Low immune system, and we all know that after 50, everyone's immune system is not like before, especially in the 60s and higher. So yes, exposure and to chickenpox is going to cause significant problems to our health. And kids who have, I always get concerned the most about the vulnerable kids who cannot, for medical reasons, have vaccines, like kids with leukemia or kids with organ transplants, any organ. You have little kids with heart transplant or anything. These kids cannot get vaccinated. Medically, they can't, or their immune system cannot tolerate measles next to them or varicella or rubella and all of the rest. So we have obligation, I would say, to people who want to use their personal freedom not to get the vaccine, helping these vulnerable people. Then your religion and your ethical values ask you to help these people.
That was pediatrician Dr. Rana Alyssa, president of the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Not everyone is alarmed by the changes. Mother of 4, Jessica Tillman, is chair of the Seminole County chapter of Moms for Liberty. She supports the Surgeon General's push to eliminate vaccine mandates. What was your reaction to Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo's announcement about removing vaccine mandates from the state's primary schools?
I was very excited personally. I have done quite a bit of research in this area. I do have 4 children, so I thought it was the right move, and I applaud him.
Are your children in public schools in Seminole County?
No, my children go to a private school. I pulled my oldest out of public school during the pandemic.
What are you hearing from other parents right now?
Really good things. Mostly people that are associated with anything that I'm a part of is very freedom-oriented, self-reliance oriented. So this is a good move in my worlds. Everyone that I speak to about it is for removing mandates.
Tell me more about why this is a good move, why ending vaccine mandates is the right move for Florida families.
I believe that vaccines, well, I don't believe they are. Vaccines are an invasive medical procedure, and a person has a right to body autonomy and speak with their physician and make choices that are right for them and for their families.
Just to be clear and make sure I'm understanding you correctly, you are not against vaccines. You're taking issue with the mandatory vaccination.
Correct. If other families choose to vaccinate, that's perfectly fine. That is also supported in parental rights.
What do you say to classroom educators who are voicing concerns that this will create an unhealthy environment for them to work in?
Well, I would tell them that there have been unvaccinated people all over the place. So I think it's very important that people are not only aware of that, but are individually choosing the vaccines, if they're choosing to, that are right for their families, and not necessarily all of them. And I know a lot of families that pick and choose, and some families don't get the annual flu vaccine, and then some families opt out of other vaccines. So it really is a one size fits all when you mandate that people have to have this to go to school.
And the pediatricians or the health officials who are concerned that rolling back vaccine requirements could lead to outbreaks of diseases like chickenpox. What is your response to that concern?
Well, I would say, again, not everyone is vaccinated for chickenpox, MMR. A lot of people, I had chickenpox when I was little, so I am not vaccinated against chickenpox or measles. So I think that it's very important that we understand that when we go out into our communities, no matter where it is, whether it's in schools, whether it's in grocery stores, we are around unvaccinated people all the time.
Is there a point where public health should outweigh personal choice, as in during an outbreak of chickenpox, for example?
Well, again, I think that we need to stick to parents making these decisions with their physicians' feedback.
Help me understand, how do you balance individual medical choice with the potential of contagious diseases spreading in shared environments like a school?
Well, that is not my background. My background is as a mother. I have the right to make health decisions for my children, period.
Now, Florida already has opt-out for required vaccines. Why isn't that option enough?
Because the government should not mandate what you're putting into your body.
Your message to Central Florida families who are listening to us, who may be uneasy about stepping back from vaccine requirements.
I would suggest that you do your own research, speak to your doctors, and do what's best for your family.
What research are you drawing from that has led you to the conclusions that you have reached?
So I have 4 children. My oldest was vaccinated up through 6th grade. So when my second child was born, we did vaccinate him as well. He did have some reactions, so we were concerned about that. So we did make that choice based on his reactions, that it was not in the best interest of our family to continue.
Your research points to the fact that this should be about family choice versus what medical professionals and scientists might say as a whole.
Well, again, you choose your medical providers. You choose who you take your family to have these discussions. So again, I think that this is a discussion between a patient and a doctor, and that should be enough for informed consent. Informed consent is all we're asking for.
That was Jessica Tillman, chair of the Seminole County chapter of Moms for Liberty. She supports the shift in vaccination policy championed by Governor Ron DeSantis. Here he is speaking about the announcement of these changes and what he believes the outcome will be.
The reality is this: since COVID and the disaster that the medical establishment inflicted on people and the lies that were told, people have lost confidence in the medical establishment. You have seen an increase in parents who are opting for those exemptions. The Surgeon General believes, and I believe, that if you actually didn't say you've got to take this, otherwise you're going to be punished, I think you'd actually have more uptake on some of those.
Florida's entire Democratic congressional delegation has called on the governor to reverse course, warning the consequences could be deadly. Republican Senator Rick Scott has also come out against proposed vaccine mandate changes, saying Florida already allows families to opt out based on religious and personal beliefs. Thank you to Jim, Essie, Curtis, Nancy from Merritt Island, and everyone who shared comments and engaged with us. We always want to hear from you. Email us at engage@cfpublic.org or send us a recorded talkback on the Central Florida Public Media app. There's more ahead on Engage. An Orlando icon has died. Mable Butler, the first Black woman elected to City Council, passed away earlier this month. We look at the legacy she leaves, the barriers she broke, and how she advocated for Central Florida's underserved. That is next. Subscribe to the Engage podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. You are listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media.
There's a lot going on in space, from efforts to land astronauts on the moon
and liftoff of Artemis 1
to answering the age-old question, are we alone in the universe?
Wouldn't you want to know if there was life on another planet?
Are We There Yet? Explores space exploration every Tuesday at 6:30 here on Central Florida Public Media.
You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Ahead on this program, Orlando remembers 9/11 with sacrifice and service. But first, the Central Florida community is mourning the loss and honoring the legacy of a woman known as a matriarch of African American politics in Orlando. Mable Butler died on Saturday. She was 98 years old. Butler was the first Black woman elected to Orlando City Council, and later the first Black member of the Orange County Board of Commissioners. The street she lived on since the early 1950s was renamed Mable Butler Avenue. Here's Mable Butler describing her childhood in a 2020 interview with Jane Tracy as part of the Orlando Memory Project, a program provided by the Orange County Library System.
My name is Mable Butler. I was born in Gainesville, Florida, but I spent all my barefoot days in Jacksonville. So what else you want to know?
Well, what was it like growing up in Jacksonville, your barefoot days?
Oh, gosh. What was it like growing up in Jacksonville? Well, of course, that was segregation, of course, during that time. And most of us knew nothing about. We knew that there were places we couldn't go and people we couldn't associate with, but I don't think that bothered us at the time because we was very much aware of it. But I was exposed to more because my mother was a jack of all trades. She was a midwife, she was a cook, she was a nurse, she was various things. My mother was long before her time. And she worked basically with white folk, and most times that the white community accepted me because I was with my mom. So I really had no problem, but, I had more problems with my people than I had with others because I was very, very fair and long, stringy hair. I never kept a clean face, so they started calling me Dirty Red, and that was I had no problem with that either because I was, well, sort of tomboyish. I guess that's why I love guys today. I mean, I came up with fellas. And of course, they didn't want me because I was a girl, but I followed them anyway. And you read all of that in my book, so let's get to something else.
Well, what was a typical Sunday like for you growing up? What would you do? Typical Sunday. Like, what would you do on a Sunday?
Oh, Sunday, always church. I mean, you went to church all day on Sunday. You went to Sunday school, stayed in church, you came home and eat, you went to BYPU. At that time, my grandfather was founder of St. Thomas Baptist, which is still established in Jacksonville. So we lived about 3 doors from the church. So, of course, church was everything. And you did everything basically at the church. And when you weren't in school, you was at church or planning to go to church. So they had all kinds of service that kept the community busy. And on Sunday, you had Sunday school service and the BYPU and then the night service. And it was... You were busy all day Sunday between eating and whatnot. Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned your grandfather. So you knew your grandparents?
I knew of my grandfather. I knew his wife, my grandmother, which was not my mother's mother. But he married my mother she married my grandfather with 5 children and raised them. So that's the only grandmother I knew. But I think I learned me, and you may read that in the book, when I was 5. We were in this car, and my grandmother was asking my mother, "Did you lock the door?" And I never forget it. My mother says, "Everything I got is ahead of me, and you asking me if I locked the door?" So I know everybody was dressed in white, and now I know we were in the hearse. I mean, in the family car, whatever, following the hearse. Mom says, "Everything is in front of me." So that's all I knew about Grandpa, other than what I learned growing up and through the years. But Grandma I knew very well.
Butler was one of only 2 people the Florida Civil Rights Museum chose to honor during their lifetime. Delatry Hollinger is the founding co-executive director of the Florida Civil Rights Museum. He was working as a district legislative aide for Senator Geraldine Thompson when he met Butler for the first time.
While I was working for Senator Thompson, I learned of Mable Butler and her extraordinary contributions to the community. And I had heard from more than one person that, you have to meet Mable Butler. And so one night after work with the legislature, I actually just drove over to her house because I knew that she lived on Mable Butler Avenue. So I just drove over and I rang the doorbell, and she was 89 at the time. And so this 89-year-old woman came to the door and she opened it. She invited me in. She fixed me a plate of food, and we sat down at her dining room table. And I mean, we just talked for hours, just hours. And you knew that you were in the presence of someone who was not only a great person, but someone who was a genuine person and someone who genuinely cared about her community, about her neighbors, and about the citizens of Orange County. She was someone who didn't pull any punches. She was someone who was unafraid to speak her mind. And she was this way her whole life. It wasn't just when she was an elected official. And it was important to her to continue serving as a commissioner, even without officially still having that title. It was important to her to continue to serve her seniors. It was important for her to still make sure that those who were less fortunate got the resources that they needed to survive. And she was just a person who, throughout her entire life, committed herself to the betterment of our society.
The Florida Civil Rights Museum, in your tribute to Mable Butler, writes that she became known as the matriarch of African American politics in Orlando. What do you think it is about her leadership style or who she was that made her so effective in a time when Black women were not part of that political space?
Well, it was the fact that she would not accept no for an answer. It was the fact that she would not just accept anything that people gave to her, that she would not accept any answer from those who were in power, from those who were at the very highest levels of power in her community and beyond. And the fact that she was a person who was very much outspoken and anything that she sought to do. Mable Butler, she could be authentically herself and still was able to get things accomplished. So in other words, she was able to tell people about themselves, tell people what they didn't want to hear from the commission days, call people out, call things as they were, and still was able to be a successful politician. And, she was not bashful as it relates to fighting for the citizens of District 6. She continued to push for Black department heads, both at the city and the county. She continued to push for African-American companies to be awarded city and county contracts. She continued to push for improvements to parks and the expansion of John Young Parkway and more street lighting for the African-American community. She continued to just be a force for African-Americans in Orlando, and unabashedly so. And I think that definitely made her stand out from anyone else who has entered the political arena, in that she was very much effective, but she was effective while not being fake or phony. She could be her real and true self and still be able to maneuver political water, still be able to get elected, still be able to get things done for the African-American community.
Delacy, people may not realize just how much she shaped Orlando. You just gave some examples. Can you talk more about how she shaped Central Florida, how her vision can still be seen? I know she played a role in bringing the Florida Classic football game here, for example.
Well, she was very proud of that. She was very proud of having brought the Florida Classic to Orlando from Tampa. She liked to say that she stole it from Tampa. And that each year for Orange County is a significant economic boost, where tens of thousands of people come here for the Classic. They have to stay in hotel rooms. They have to buy food. They have to buy gas. So look at what that has done to shape the economy there in Orlando, and also just the many services that she participated in even before she became an elected official. She was very vocal and active in the Democratic Party before she got elected to the Orlando City Council. In fact, she told me the story of how there was an African-American woman, B. Bruton, who had been appointed by Governor Bob Graham to the Orlando City Council. Now, the funny thing about that is that Commissioner Butler had worked on both of Bob Graham's campaigns for governor, but there were people in the state conference of the NAACP who supported Commissioner Butler being appointed to that vacant seat back in 1983. But there were some people who had cautioned the governor against appointing her simply because of how outspoken she was on the part of citizens in her community. And so what happened is the following year, in 1984, she was able to come along and unseat the lady who had been appointed by the governor. So she thus became the first African-American woman ever to be elected to the Orlando City Council. And she had been very vocal because of her involvement in the Democratic Party, because of her involvement in numerous political campaigns. She was a part of a biracial committee that had been formed in the 1960s to discuss race relations in Orlando. She brought attention in the 60s, long before she was elected, to poor housing conditions that had plagued Central Florida. And as a result of her efforts on that biracial committee, the Orlando Human Relations Commission was formed. And so she began making her mark and laying a foundation long before she was ever elected. She worked in the community in social services. And so she was a person who was very well known by the time it came to seek any type of public office. She was very well known in the Black community, very well known for speaking up for the community, very well known as an advocate for the community, and someone who had worked on very successful campaigns. Every campaign she worked on leading up to her election was a very successful one.
And she actually never set out to do politics. What do you think changed?
This is what she told me, and I'm thankful that I can give you firsthand information. She told me that because of her very strong personality, she was just very blunt. She was not a person who polished her words. She was not a person who was politically correct. And so because of that, she did not feel that she would be a good candidate for office. Now, what happened was that people came to her and encouraged her to run. And initially, she refused their request. But once Ms. Bruton was appointed in 1983, more and more people encouraged her to run for that District 6 City Council seat. So the request from the community became so overwhelming until she decided that she would go ahead and get in the race. And the people who helped her and who surrounded her and who supported her, they went to the polls and made sure that she was elected to that seat. And the city of Orlando and Orange County are all the better for it.
What is something about her or a lesson or a principle that she lived by that you think leaders today should hear?
I think that Mable Butler was a lesson in authenticity. She was a lesson in courage. She showed you that you could be your authentic self and be bold and be courageous and be outspoken and still be respected, still be successful, still become involved in elective office. And she was a lesson in selflessness, completely giving of yourself, of your resources without regard to self. Not to the point of neglecting oneself, but not being selfish. And she was unlike any other politician because her house was just open to the community for years, for decades. She would take in strangers, she would make sure people had a hot meal. She would give out money and food to people in the community who she felt needed it. And so she was an anomaly. And there are many lessons, I think, that politicians today could learn from her, but she was a lesson in authenticity.
Delatry Hollinger is the founding co-executive director of the Florida Civil Rights Museum. In a statement, Congressman Maxwell Frost wrote, "I am deeply saddened by the news of the Honorable Mable Butler's passing. This is a profound loss for our Central Florida community. She led with love, courage, and grit, always championing the people of Central Florida, especially our Black and Brown communities that are too often left behind. Even after retiring from public office after 20-plus years of service, she remained a force to be reckoned with in our community and a voice for progress. And I would not be serving in Congress today if it weren't for leaders like her who blazed the trail for me. She leaves behind a legacy not just as the matriarch of African American politics, but one that will continue to make Central Florida a better place for all and inspire the next generation of future leaders. Coming up, Remembrance meets Action. We take you to the Orlando Fire Department's tribute to honor those who died on September 11th, 2001, and hear from the veteran volunteers giving back by building a better future for students in Central Florida. You are listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media.
The Wrap is a podcast from Central Florida Public Media, curating the top Central Florida news stories and in-depth reporting each week. Join me, Brendan Byrne, as I bring you news headlines, deep reporting dives, and insightful conversations from the news team. A new episode of The Wrap every Friday morning. Get it wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. If you're old enough to have lived through it, you probably remember exactly where you were on the morning of September 11th, 2001. It's a memory seared into the fabric of America today, and a reminder there are people willing to put their lives on the line to protect us. On September 11th, firefighters and police officers of New York made that sacrifice. Today, they are being remembered by the Orlando Fire Department. The Brotherhood of Firefighters runs deep throughout every community in America. More than 24 firefighters gathered this morning at City National Bank downtown to recreate the 110-floor climb New York firefighters committed to 24 years ago when they selflessly entered the two burning buildings of the World Trade Center.
One thing that was unique to that day, for police officers, for firefighters, for the medical community, for the community at large, after that event, one thing that resonates with me is how we came together as a country. And although at the time, there was polarization, and today, you see that today. But remember what we do today? We serve whoever it is at any time, at a moment's notice. And remember how united we were then. Remember, especially today, we have to be united in order to do our jobs.
Producer Richard Copeland spoke with Orlando Fire Chief Charlie Salazar in the lobby of the bank where the stair climb was staging.
Today we're climbing 110 floors, but today we remember the firefighters in New York that on a day where tragedy struck, they are committed to serve the community, protect lives and property. So I've started climbing, and firefighters that are coming here today, we remember the families, the firefighters, the police officers, military personnel, the medical professionals that came together on that day to unite and to serve the community. But it's a reflection that we have, and it's events like that remind us each and every day why we do this kind of work, that we put our lives on the line to make sure that the community is served, and we would do it again if tragedy struck. That's what we are called to do.
Now, in my lifetime, I don't recall an event that left a scar on both the country and me individually the way 9/11 did. How do you talk about it to young people? People who are born after 9/11 are now coming out of college.
So, for me, I remember in history talking about how my mom and my grandparents talked about Pearl Harbor. And so today, I imagine that when we speak, especially to our children, and they watch us and they ask, you were alive during that time, what was that like? And I tell them exactly what I was doing, because everybody that was alive remembers what they were doing at that time. But I tell them that one of the most unique things was that even though these fire and police professionals knew that there was harm in their way, they were committed to serve. And as they were responding, there was people in stairwells, and how they were grabbing folks and bringing them down and saving lives. And although many were lost, the heroic efforts of that day, many were saved, but many more would have been lost had everybody not engaged the way that they did. So just reliving that and explaining that to them in a way that they can understand how important it is about the kind of work that we do today. But not only that, also tell them about how united the country was after that, to be, have situational awareness, love one another, take care of each other, and continue to serve the community.
What is your memory of where you were in that 9 a.m. hour, 9/11/2001?
I hired on in 93. In 2001, I had just transported a patient to the hospital, and I was getting phone calls from my brother and my wife as I was returning to the fire station, and they said that there was a plane that struck one of the towers downtown New York. So when we got to the fire station, all the firefighters were surrounded around the television watching these things unfold, and that was before the building started coming down. And as the building started coming down, all of us were just speechless, and that's what I remember at that time.
And who's going to be out here climbing stairs today?
Okay, so today the majority of the firefighters participating happen to be from Orlando, but Central Florida firefighters are also participating today. And then there's a few civilians that come out here. They support us and they remember this event. And, it's a good way to remind us about that event, but it's also a good way to condition and remind us that we have to be in shape to do this kind of work.
You got to get in the cardio, got to keep that going.
That's exactly right, because the community expects us to perform, and if we're not in shape, then we can't perform.
That was Orlando Fire Department Chief Charlie Salazar speaking with producer Richard Copeland earlier today. In the years since the terror attacks in 2001, September 11th has become a day of service. The Mission Continues is a veteran volunteer organization to help connect veterans with ways to continue their service in under-resourced communities. They're hosting a United in Service in Remembrance of 9/11 project in Orlando Saturday. They'll be building new planter boxes for students at Lion of Judah Academy in Pine Hills so they can grow fresh food. Kat Dobbs is platoon leader for the Mission Continues Orlando platoon, and she wants people in the community to join their event to give back.
Service has really been ingrained into us from, obviously, the second we step right into boot camp, you step right onto those yellow dots or those yellow footprints, wherever you went. Service is just always be into us. I was in the Air National Guard. Service before self is one of the core values of the Air Force. And so when we get out, it's like, now what? How can I keep giving back to the community? I used to do that through my service, and now I'm able to do that through the Mission Continues by doing various service projects in my own local community, which is kind of awesome because you're serving alongside your neighbors, which makes it super fun.
Speaking of service, you have a September 11th day of service coming up. Can you talk to me about what does this day mean to you personally and just to this larger veteran community that you're part of?
I think it's easier to speak to the larger veteran community. Most veterans now that are, if you will, in my generation of veterans, we are post 9/11 veterans. And so many of us either joined because of 9/11 or we remember it very vividly. And of course, that post 9/11 era is a very large era. So there are some of us who may not remember it. I was in third grade. We almost lost one of my family members in the fall of the towers. It was just because he didn't end up going to work that day or he took a half day that we didn't lose him. And so this day to us is just really continuing to serve and to just really honor and remember those whose lives have been taken from us, whether it was in the attack on September 11th or just through the ongoing conflicts since then. And then for me personally, this 9/11, this event, it's another way to create that community and just bring us all together once again.
Tell me more about the United in Service project this weekend. What are you doing? Why is it important to the community?
So this weekend's project is going to be really just building planter boxes at the Lion of Judah Academy. The head mistress has actually been to several of our events prior, just with joining up with our platoon. She's an incredible woman. And she was saying, hey, would you all be willing or interested in helping our school out? And I said, absolutely. We would love to help your school out. They're like, we heard you built some planter boxes at other schools. And I was like, I love building planter boxes. I love gardening and planting things, especially because it's teaching very valuable life skills to some of these students. I've already bought seeds for various fruits and vegetables so that they can grow themselves and they will have access to fresh fruit and vegetables. And eating something that you grew yourself always tastes so much better.
It sounds like it aligns well with some of your personal passions.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a background. My mother was a master gardener, so I like to joke that I grew up in a nursery. I had a little job in the nursery where I had to go pick up all the fallen plants. And so that was their way to keep me occupied. So anything really involving the environment and teaching people just how to grow their own food and sustainable living and things like that, that's something I'm super passionate about. So I love the fact that I'm going to be able to not only give back to this community and give them something so that they can go on and do it themselves, but also just be able to talk about it and explain what I know and what little expertise I have.
And this academy is located in the Pine Hills area of Orlando. Can you talk to me more about who can get involved in this and what do they need to know before showing up?
I would say anybody can get involved. We are primarily a veteran organization, but I drag my friends out with me, be like, come on, go help me out with this service project. One of my good friends, she's come out and volunteered with us a couple of times. And she's like, it's really fun. It's been a while since I've been able to volunteer. So anyone can join. I mean, my mom has come out to some service projects before, which has been super awesome too.
And Kat, for our listeners, whether they're service members, veterans, civilians, what is your message about serving in honor of 9/11?
I think it's just remembering that at the end of the day, 9/11 it's been a while since then. And many of us who are younger, those who are younger than me, they may not remember it as well. And so just knowing that even if you don't remember it, coming in with that intention to honor those who are no longer with us and understanding that we're here to just try to keep continuously improving our community however we can.
Kat Dobbs is platoon leader for the Mission Continues Orlando Platoon. The volunteer event is from 10 to 1 on Saturday, September 13th at Lion of Judah Academy on North Pine Hills Road in Orlando. That's all for this week's edition of Engage. And remember, if your schedule keeps you from hearing all of an Engage story, or if you miss a whole show, Engage is always available on demand at cfpublic.org, or you can sign up on your favorite podcast provider to have Engage delivered automatically every week. I'm Sharon Stone. Thank you for joining us. All Things Considered is coming up following NPR News.